Patrolman Williams stopped writing about ordinary things. His notebook became a record of absence, nights without attacks, days without leads, weeks in which the killer seemed to dissolve into the air as if he had never existed at all. "The town is quieter," he wrote. "Then, beneath it, not safer." State troopers set up checkpoints on the highways leading in and out of town. Drivers were ordered out of their cars. Trunks opened. Flashlights passed over spare tires, toolboxes, folded blankets that smelled faintly of gasoline and dust. The men conducting the searches had begun to look at one another differently. They were no longer certain who they were hunting, because the description had become too large to hold in one body. A white male, medium build, local, not local, young, older, a man who knew the roads, a man who watched from the trees, a man who had no face. Sammy Cates gained access to the police records by pretending he already had permission. The file room smelled of dust and damp cardboard. Each folder held a life reduced to a few typed pages and photographs that were never meant for public eyes. He studied the timelines, the distances between crime scenes, the intervals between attacks, and something began to form in his mind. Not a suspect, not yet, but a pattern of movement. Whoever the killer was, he did not wander. He traveled with purpose. He struck where he knew he would not be interrupted, which meant he understood patrol routes, which meant he listened to the police radio, which meant... Sammy closed the folder. Some conclusions were dangerous even when spoken only inside your own head. Mary Jean left Texarkana before autumn. She did not tell anyone she was going. Years later, a nurse in Shreveport would say that Mary Jean refused to sit near windows. She flinched at the sound of engines idling behind her car. She never drove at night. When asked about what happened, she would only say, "He breathed like someone who was calm." Virgil Starks remained in the house on South Park Road. The bullet holes were patched, but never painted. Visitors noticed that he kept the curtains open after dark, every light burning. "If he comes back," Virgil told a neighbor once, "I want him to see me watching." In late 1947, a man was brought in from a nearby town. He had a history. He owned a car similar to one seen near the lanes. He carried a .32 caliber pistol. Under questioning, he sweated through his shirt and asked for water 3 times in 10 minutes. He knew details about the attacks that had never appeared in the newspapers. For 48 hours, the town believed it was over. Then his mother arrived with a stack of letters he had written her during the weeks of the murders, postmarked from a different city, each one describing the weather, each one signed the same way: "Your son who misses home." He was released at dawn. By noon, people were locking their doors again. The war had ended less than a year earlier. Texarkana was full of men who had seen things they did not speak about. Men who woke in the night and walked the length of their houses without remembering why. Men who sat with their backs to walls in restaurants. Men who kept guns within reach even while shaving. A psychologist from Dallas suggested the killer might be one of them. A man who had learned to move silently in the dark. A man for whom violence had become a language. A man who had returned home to find that the world expected him to forget. Patrolman Williams wrote only one sentence beneath the newspaper clipping about the theory. "War does not create monsters. It teaches ordinary men how to become efficient." In 1950, a fisherman reported an abandoned vehicle near Spring Lake. It had been there for days. The battery was dead. Inside, beneath the seat, officers found a flashlight wrapped in cloth and a box of ammunition of the same caliber used in the attacks. The license plate had been removed. The serial numbers on the weapon were filed down so carefully it looked like a craftsman's work. No fingerprints. No witnesses. Only the feeling that someone had stood in that place again, years later, and watched the water as if remembering something that belonged only to him. Patrolman Williams retired in 1952. His final notebook entry was written in ink so faint it was almost invisible. I have stopped looking for the man. I am looking for the life that does not fit. Sammy found the meaning of that sentence by accident. In a list of officers who had taken medical leave during the spring of 1946. One name. 3 weeks absent after the first attack. Returned to duty before the second. Transferred quietly to another county after the Starks shooting. No photograph in the file. Only a notation. Resigned for personal reasons. Sammy drove to the town where the former officer was said to have lived. The house had been sold years earlier. The neighbors remembered very little. A polite man. Kept to himself. Worked nights. Moved away suddenly. One detail remained. He had installed floodlights around his property. All of them pointed outward. In the archives of a small newspaper, Sammy found a group photo from a police picnic in 1945. Men standing in rows, their wives seated in front of them, children squinting into the sun. He recognized Williams immediately. Then his eyes moved to the man beside him. Medium build. Ordinary face. A smile that did not reach the eyes. On the back of the photograph, someone had written a list of names. One of them was crossed out. Sammy never published the story. By the time he confirmed the timeline, the man had been dead for 2 years, killed in a factory accident in another state. There would be no trial, no confession, no moment in which the town could gather and release the breath it had been holding for decades. He showed the photograph to Williams instead. The old patrolman studied it for a long time. Then he closed his notebook for the last time. "I told you," he said. "He was one of us." In Texarkana, there are still houses where the porch lights burn all night. No one remembers exactly when the habit began. Parents tell their children it is for safety, for comfort, for the darkness beyond the yard. But the truth lives in older people's voices when they lower them to speak about the spring of 1946. About the weekends when the town stopped breathing. About the man who walked without a face. About the possibility that he wore a uniform by day and listened to their fear over the radio at night. And when the moon is bright over Spring Lake, there is still a moment when the night seems to wait for someone to step out of the trees. Not because he will, but because once he did.